Agnes lived in a small, cozy cottage nestled at the foot of the Whispering Hills. Her hands, gnarled and strong from years of work, moved with a practiced grace as she stitched together pieces of fabric. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the vibrant colors of her latest quilt. This wasn't just any quilt, though. This was a story, a secret, a map woven into a tapestry of cottons and linens. Each patch held a memory, a clue, a piece of the puzzle that was her family's history. There was the deep blue of the river that once flowed freely through their land, the green of the meadows where her grandfather grazed his sheep, and the rough brown of the rocky cliffs that marked the boundary of their property. Agnes carefully chose each fabric, each thread with a purpose. A tiny embroidered bird on a patch of sky-blue silk marked the location of a hidden spring. A series of overlapping stitches in a field of yellow cotton represented a treacherous ravine. And a small, almost invisible button sewn onto a patch of dark green wool signified a secret cave. She hummed a tuneless melody as she worked, her mind filled with memories of her family. She remembered her grandmother teaching her to sew, her father telling stories of the land, and her mother's unwavering spirit. They had all loved this land, and it had been cruelly stolen from them. Agnes knew she was getting older. Her eyesight wasn't as sharp as it used to be, and her joints ached with the changing seasons. But her determination burned brighter than ever. She would reclaim her family's land, not for herself, but for their memory. The quilt was her key, her guide, her weapon. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help, brave and resourceful friends who would stand by her side and help her unravel the secrets hidden within the fabric. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across her work table, but Agnes didn't stop. She knew that time was running out and the land was calling. She carefully folded the quilt, its weight familiar and comforting in her arms. The adventure was about to begin, but how had it come to this? How had Agnes, a simple quilter, found herself on the brink of such a daring quest? It all began generations ago with her great-grandparents, Elias and Maeve. They were the first to settle in the Whispering Hills, hardy pioneers who carved a life out of the wilderness. They built their home with their own two hands, tilled the soil, and raised a family. The land provided everything they needed: food, shelter, and a sense of belonging. Elias was a skilled carpenter, and Maeve was a gifted gardener. Together, they transformed the rugged landscape into a thriving farm. They understood the rhythm of the seasons, the secrets of the soil, and the language of the wind. They lived in harmony with nature, respecting its power and appreciating its beauty. But their peaceful existence was shattered by the arrival of strangers, men with slick-back hair, fancy suits, and greedy eyes. They called themselves land speculators, and they claimed that Elias and Maeve's land was rightfully theirs. They presented forged documents, made empty promises, and threatened violence. Elias and Maeve fought back with all their might. They hired a lawyer, gathered their neighbors, and appealed to the local authorities. But the speculators were powerful and ruthless. They bribed officials, spread lies, and intimidated anyone who stood in their way. In the end, Elias and Maeve were forced to leave their home. They were heartbroken and defeated, but they refused to give up hope. Before they left, Maeve secretly buried a small wooden box containing the original land deed, a symbol of their rightful ownership. She also passed down the stories of the land to her children, ensuring that the memory of their stolen heritage would never be forgotten. Agnes, as the last of her line, felt the weight of that legacy on her shoulders. She had heard the stories countless times, each retelling fueling her determination. She knew that reclaiming the land wouldn't be easy, but she was prepared to face any challenge. The quilt was her way of honoring her ancestors and restoring justice to her family. It was more than just a piece of fabric. It was a promise, a legacy, and a map to her family's stolen birthright. The quilt itself was a marvel, a testament to Agnes's skill and ingenuity. It wasn't just a pretty blanket, it was a carefully crafted map, a series of coded messages woven into every stitch and patch. The fabrics themselves held meaning. For example, a square of rough homespun cloth represented the old barn, its texture mimicking the weathered wood. A shimmering piece of iridescent silk depicted the hidden waterfall, its colors shifting like the sunlight on the cascading water. The stitches were just as important as the fabrics. Long, straight stitches marked well-worn paths, while short, choppy stitches indicated rough terrain. A cluster of French knots represented a patch of thorny bushes, and a delicate chain stitch outlined the winding river. Agnes even used different colored threads to indicate elevation, with darker shades representing higher ground and lighter shades representing lower ground. One particularly important patch was made from a piece of Maeve's wedding dress, a delicate lace that shimmered in the light. This patch marked the location of the buried land deed, the key to proving their rightful ownership. It was hidden near a cluster of wildflowers, represented by tiny embroidered daisies and forget-me-nots. Another patch, a vibrant explosion of reds and oranges, depicted the sunset over the Whispering Hills. This patch marked the entrance to a secret passage, a narrow crevice hidden behind a rocky outcrop. Only those who knew the land well would be able to find it. Agnes also incorporated several false clues into the quilt, designed to mislead anyone who might try to steal it or decipher it without her guidance. These misleading patches were cleverly disguised, but Agnes knew exactly which ones they were and how to avoid them. One of these was a patch of a wolf howling at the moon. It looked important, but it only signified a scary story her grandfather used to tell. The quilt was more than just a map. It was a work of art, a piece of history, and a testament to Agnes's love for her family and her land. It was a tangible representation of her determination to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Every time she looked at it, she felt a surge of hope and a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that she had the wisdom of her ancestors and the strength of her own convictions to guide her. Agnes knew she couldn't face the speculators alone. She needed allies, friends who shared her sense of justice and her love for the land. She started by thinking about the people in her small town who might be willing to help. First, there was Lily, a bright and energetic young girl who often helped Agnes in her garden. Lily was quick-witted and fearless, always eager for an adventure. She possessed an uncanny ability to climb trees and squeeze into tight spaces, skills that could prove invaluable on their journey. Lily's grandmother had also been swindled by the same land speculators, so she had a personal stake in seeing justice served. Then there was Bo, a gentle giant who worked at the local sawmill. Bo was known for his incredible strength and his kind heart. He was quiet and unassuming, but he was fiercely loyal to his friends. Agnes knew that Bo's strength would be essential for overcoming obstacles and protecting them from danger. He also knew the woods like the back of his hand, his tracking skills unmatched. Finally, there was Finn, a bookish and clever boy who spent most of his time at the library. Finn was a master of maps and codes, and he possessed a vast knowledge of local history and folklore. Agnes knew that Finn's intelligence would be crucial for deciphering the more complex clues in the quilt and navigating the treacherous terrain. His eyesight was also exceptional, which would be helpful in spotting things others might miss. Gathering them together wasn't easy. Each had their own doubts and fears. Lily worried about her grandmother, Bo was hesitant to use his strength, and Finn was scared of leaving the safety of his books. But Agnes, with her unwavering determination and her heartfelt stories of the land, managed to convince them that they were the only ones who could help her reclaim what was rightfully hers. She promised them that they would face danger, but that they would also create a lasting friendship, and that they would know that they fought for something good. And so, the ragtag posse was formed. An old quilter, a spirited girl, a gentle giant, and a clever boy. They were an unlikely group, but they were united by their shared desire for justice and their unwavering loyalty to Agnes. They were ready to embark on their adventure, armed with a quilt, a dream, and the courage to stand up to those who had wronged them. The morning sun cast long shadows as Agnes spread the quilt on her kitchen table. Lily, Bo, and Finn gathered around, their eyes wide with anticipation. The quilt seemed even more intricate and mysterious up close. "All right," Agnes said, her voice firm but kind. "Let's begin." "The first clue is represented by this patch." She pointed to a square of bright yellow fabric adorned with a single, perfectly stitched sunflower. "What do you think it means?" Vin, ever the scholar, spoke first. "Sunflowers often symbolize warmth and happiness. Perhaps it leads us to a place that brings joy." Lily, always practical, offered a different perspective. "Or maybe it's a place where sunflowers actually grow. I've seen some growing near the old trailhead, the one that leads into the Whispering Hills." Agnes smiled. "You're both on the right track. The sunflower represents a real sunflower that grows near the trailhead. It marks the beginning of our journey." With the quilt carefully folded and tucked into Agnes's satchel, the group set off towards the Whispering Hills. The trailhead was overgrown and forgotten, but Lily quickly spotted the sunflower, its bright yellow face turned towards the sun. "There it is," she exclaimed, pointing to the tall, sturdy plant, "just like on the quilt." Agnes approached the sunflower and carefully examined it. She noticed that the stem was slightly bent, pointing in a particular direction. "Look," she said, "the sunflower is trying to tell us something. It's pointing towards that cluster of rocks." The group followed Agnes towards the rocks, their hearts pounding with excitement. As they approached, they noticed a small, almost invisible path leading through the rocks. "This must be it," Bo said, his voice a low rumble, "the path to our destiny." Agnes nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "This is just the first step. The journey will be long and difficult, but we must never give up hope. Our ancestors are counting on us." With a deep breath, Agnes led the way, the quilt her guide and her friends her strength. The adventure had begun. They entered the narrow path, leaving the familiar world behind and stepping into the unknown. The air grew cooler and the sounds of the forest enveloped them. The Whispering Hills held their breath, waiting to reveal their secrets. The narrow path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the Whispering Hills. The air grew thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Soon, they came to a wide ravine, spanned by a rickety wooden bridge. The bridge looked old and unstable, its planks rotting and its ropes frayed. "Oh dear," Agnes said, her voice filled with concern. "This bridge doesn't look very safe." Lily, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her. "Don't worry, Agnes. We can do it, we just need to be careful." Finn, however, was more cautious. "I don't know," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "That bridge looks like it could collapse at any moment." Bo stepped forward, his large frame radiating strength and confidence. "I'll go first," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'll test the bridge and make sure it's safe for everyone else." With slow, deliberate steps, Bo began to cross the bridge. The planks groaned and creaked under his weight, and the rope swayed precariously. Everyone held their breath, watching anxiously as Bo made his way across. Halfway across the bridge, one of the planks snapped with a loud crack. Bo stumbled, his arms flailing for balance. For a moment, it looked like he was going to fall into the ravine below, but Bo was quick and strong. He regained his balance and continued to cross the bridge, his determination unwavering. Finally, he reached the other side, safe and sound. "It's safe," he called out, his voice filled with relief. "But we need to be careful. One person at a time and walk slowly." Agnes went next, followed by Lily and Finn. They each crossed the bridge with caution, their hearts pounding in their chests. Finally, they were all safely on the other side. "Thank you, Bo," Agnes said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You saved us all. We couldn't have done it without you." Bo simply smiled, his gentle eyes filled with kindness. "We're a team," he said. "We look out for each other." The rickety bridge had tested their courage and their teamwork, but it had also brought them closer together. They were learning to rely on each other's strengths and to overcome their fears. The journey was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they had each other's backs. They continued their journey. After the bridge, the path split into two. One path led upwards, winding through a dense forest, while the other path sloped downwards, towards a dark and shadowy valley. Agnes pulled out the quilt, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Which way do we go?" Lily asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Agnes studied the quilt carefully. She pointed to a patch made of dark blue velvet, adorned with tiny silver stars. "This patch represents the night sky," she explained. "It's telling us to look to the stars for guidance." Finn, whose knowledge of astronomy was unmatched, stepped forward. "The stars can help us determine direction," he said. "If we know the constellations, we can figure out which path leads north." He looked up at the sky, which was partially obscured by the trees. "I think I see the Big Dipper," he said, pointing to a group of stars. "If we follow the line of the two stars at the end of the Dipper's cup, it will lead us to Polaris, the North Star." Finn carefully aligned himself with the Big Dipper and pointed towards the path that led upwards, through the forest. "That's the path we need to take," he said. "It leads north." Agnes nodded, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're a true scholar, Finn," she said. "Your knowledge has saved us once again." Bo, who wasn't familiar with the constellations, was impressed by Finn's skills. "I never knew the stars could be so helpful," he said. Lily, always eager to learn, asked Finn to teach her about the constellations. Finn happily obliged, pointing out the different star patterns and explaining their significance. As they started along the path that led north, Agnes realized the importance of having a diverse team. Each member brought unique skills and knowledge to the table, and they were learning to rely on each other's strengths. Lily's energy and optimism kept their spirits high, Bo's strength and courage provided protection, and Finn's intelligence and knowledge guided them through the wilderness. And Agnes, with her wisdom and her quilt, was the glue that held them all together. The path was long and arduous, but they were determined to reach their destination, knowing that they were stronger together than they were apart. They continued onward, guided by the stars and united by their shared dream. As they continued along the northward path, the trees grew thicker and the shadows deepened. The air was still and silent, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Suddenly, they heard a twig snap behind them. Agnes stopped, her hand instinctively reaching for the quilt in her satchel. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Bo, ever vigilant, scanned the surrounding forest. "I think we're being followed," he said, his voice low and serious. They huddled together, their hearts pounding in their chests. After a few tense moments, a figure emerged from the trees. It was a tall, burly man with a scowling face and a rifle slung over his shoulder. He wore the uniform of the land speculator's security force. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice harsh and threatening. "This is private property, you're trespassing." Agnes stood her ground, her eyes filled with defiance. "This land belongs to my family," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It was stolen from us by your employers." The guard sneered. "That's a load of nonsense. This land belongs to Mr. Harding now, and he doesn't take kindly to trespassers." He raised his rifle, pointing it directly at Agnes. "I'm giving you one last chance to leave. Turn around and go back where you came from, or you'll regret it." Agnes knew that they were in a dangerous situation, but she refused to be intimidated. She looked at the guard, then at the surrounding forest. She remembered a patch on the quilt made of rough, green corduroy. It represented a dense thicket of thorny bushes, a place where someone familiar with the land could easily hide. "We're not going anywhere," Agnes said, her voice filled with newfound confidence. "This is our land and we're here to reclaim it." She quickly pointed to a specific spot on the ground, covered with fallen leaves. "Lily, now," she commanded. Lily, understanding immediately, darted forward and kicked away the leaves, revealing a hidden pit filled with mud and water. The guard, caught off guard, stumbled and fell into the pit, his rifle clattering to the ground. Bo quickly disarmed the guard while Finn tied him up with rope. Agnes approached the fallen guard, her eyes filled with pity. "We don't want to hurt you," she said. "We just want what's rightfully ours." They left the guard tied up in the pit, knowing that he would eventually be found. They continued on their journey, their resolve strengthened by their encounter. They knew that the speculators wouldn't give up easily, but they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They pressed on, the sun was beginning to set, casting long, orange shadows across the whispering hills. The team was tired and hungry, but they knew they couldn't stop now. They needed to find a safe place to rest for the night. Agnes consulted the quilt once again. She pointed to a patch made of light blue cotton, adorned with tiny embroidered raindrops. "This patch represents a hidden spring," she said. "It's telling us that there's water nearby." They followed the directions indicated by the quilt, carefully navigating through the dense forest. After a short while, they heard the sound of trickling water. Their spirits lifted, they quickened their pace, and soon they arrived at a small, secluded clearing. In the center of the clearing was a spring of clear, sparkling water. It bubbled up from the ground, forming a small pool surrounded by lush green ferns and moss. The air was cool and refreshing, and the sound of the water was soothing and calming. "This is perfect," Lily said, her voice filled with relief. "We can rest here for the night." They drank deeply from the spring, quenching their thirst and replenishing their energy. They gathered firewood and built a small fire which provided warmth and light. Agnes shared some dried fruit and nuts that she had brought in her satchel, and they all ate their fill. As they sat around the fire, Agnes told them stories of her childhood, of how she used to play by the spring with her brothers and sisters. She spoke of the beauty of the land and the importance of protecting it for future generations. Finn, who was always eager to learn, asked Agnes about the history of the spring. Agnes explained that it had been a sacred place for her family for centuries, a place of healing and renewal. Bo, who was usually quiet and reserved, shared his own story of how he had discovered the spring as a young boy and how it had helped him through a difficult time in his life. Lily, always optimistic, said that she felt lucky to have found such a special place. She said that she would never forget the spring or the journey that had brought them there. As the fire died down and the stars filled the night sky, they all drifted off to sleep, lulled by the sound of the trickling water. They were safe and warm, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the friendship of each other. They knew that they were one step closer to reclaiming their land, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had found a haven, a sanctuary, a place of peace in the heart of the Whispering Hills. The next morning, they awoke refreshed and ready to face the final leg of their journey. The quilt indicated that the speculators' main camp was located on a plateau overlooking the Whispering Hills, a place easily defended but also vulnerable to a clever surprise. Agnes studied the quilt carefully, focusing on a patch made of a vibrant orange and red fabric. It depicted a sunset, but the stitches were arranged in a way that suggested movement and chaos. "This patch tells us that we need to create a distraction," Agnes explained. "We need to find a way to draw their attention away from the main gate." Lily, always full of ideas, spoke up. "What if we set off some fireworks?" "That would definitely get their attention." Finn, however, had a different suggestion. "Fireworks might scare them off, but they might also make them more alert. We need something that will confuse them, something that will make them think that something else is happening." Agnes smiled. "I think I have an idea," she said. "Remember that wolf patch on the quilt, the one that I said was a false clue? Well, it's not entirely false. It represents a story my grandfather used to tell about a pack of wolves that roamed these hills. What if we could make the speculators believe that the wolves have returned?" Bo, with his knowledge of the woods, knew exactly what to do. He gathered some branches and leaves and carefully arranged them to create the illusion of a pack of wolves moving through the forest. He even used some old quilts that Agnes had brought with her to create scarecrows in the shape of wolves. They placed the wolves strategically around the plateau, making sure that they were visible from the speculators' camp. Then Lily, using her talent for mimicry, imitated the sound of wolves howling. The plan worked perfectly. The speculators, hearing the howling and seeing the wolves moving through the forest, were convinced that they were under attack. They rushed to the perimeter, their attention focused on the supposed wolf pack. While the speculators were distracted, Agnes, Lily, Bo, and Finn quietly approached the main gate. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they had a plan and the courage to see it through. The final confrontation was about to begin. They moved forward cautiously. The gate was lightly guarded, the remaining speculators still focused on the wolf attack in the distance. Agnes knew that this was their chance. She nodded to Lily, who slipped through the gate like a shadow, her small size and agility making her nearly invisible. "Remember the plan," Agnes whispered. "Find the deed and meet us back here." Lily disappeared into the camp, while Agnes, Bo, and Finn waited anxiously outside. They could hear the sounds of shouting and confusion coming from the forest, but the camp itself remained relatively quiet. Inside the camp, Lily moved quickly and quietly, searching for the main office. She remembered the patch on the quilt made of Maeve's wedding dress, the one that represented the buried deed. The lace was delicate and intricate, just like the details of the office building. She found the office and carefully slipped inside. The room was filled with papers and documents, but Lily knew exactly what she was looking for. She searched the drawers and shelves, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she found it, a small wooden box tied with a faded ribbon. She opened the box and carefully unfolded the document inside. It was the original land deed, proving that the land belonged to Agnes's family. Lily grabbed the deed and raced back to the gate, her heart soaring with triumph. She burst through the gate, breathless but elated. "I found it," she exclaimed, waving the deed in the air. "I found the deed." Agnes, Bo, and Finn cheered with joy. They had done it. They had reclaimed their family's land, but their celebration was short-lived. The speculators, realizing that they had been tricked, came rushing towards them, their faces filled with anger and rage. "You little thieves," Mr. Harding, the leader of the speculators, shouted. "Give me that deed back." Agnes stood her ground, her eyes filled with defiance. "This deed belongs to my family," she said, "and we're not giving it back." The final stand was upon them. This was it, Mr. Harding and his men advanced, their faces contorted with anger. Bo stepped forward, shielding Agnes, Lily, and Finn with his large frame. "Stay back," he warned, his voice a low rumble. "We don't want any trouble." "But Mr. Harding was not one to be reasoned with. "Seize them," he commanded. The speculators lunged forward, but Bo was ready for them. He used his strength to push them back, creating a protective barrier around his friends. Finn, despite his fear, used his quick wit to distract the speculators. He started shouting about the wolves, claiming that they were still out there and that they were getting closer. The speculators, momentarily distracted, hesitated. Agnes seized the opportunity to speak. "This land belongs to my family," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We have the deed to prove it. You have no right to be here." She held up the deed for all to see. The speculators, seeing the official document, began to waver. Some of them looked at each other with doubt and uncertainty. Mr. Harding, however, refused to give up. "That deed is a fake," he shouted. "Don't listen to her." He lunged towards Agnes, trying to snatch the deed from her hand. But Lily was too quick for him. She darted forward and snatched the deed away, passing it to Finn, who tucked it safely into his pocket. "It's no use, Harding," Agnes said, her voice filled with confidence. "We have the proof. Your time here is over." The speculators, seeing that they were outnumbered and outsmarted, finally gave up. They packed their bags and left the camp, their tails between their legs. Agnes, Lily, Bo, and Finn watched as the speculators disappeared into the distance. They had won. They had reclaimed their family's land. As the sun set over the Whispering Hills, casting a golden glow over the land, they embraced, tears of joy streaming down their faces. They had faced danger, overcome obstacles, and triumphed over adversity. They had proven that with courage, friendship, and a little bit of quilting magic, anything is possible. The stolen land had been rightfully returned. Weeks turned into months. Agnes, with the help of Lily, Bo, and Finn, began the long process of restoring the land to its former glory. They replanted the meadows, repaired the fences, and rebuilt the old barn. They worked tirelessly, their hearts filled with joy and gratitude. The community, inspired by their courage and determination, rallied around them. Neighbors helped with the repairs, donated supplies, and offered words of encouragement. The story of Agnes and her ragtag posse became a legend, a testament to the power of family, friendship, and standing up for what's right. Lily learned to quilt from Agnes, her nimble fingers quickly mastering the art. Bo used his strength and his knowledge of the woods to protect the land and its creatures. Finn, with his sharp mind and his love of learning, became the town historian, preserving the stories of the past for future generations. Agnes's cottage became a gathering place for the community, a place where people could share stories, celebrate traditions, and find comfort and support. The quilt, now a symbol of hope and resilience, was displayed proudly in the main room, its vibrant colors and intricate patterns telling the story of their incredible journey. The speculators never returned. They had learned their lesson, realizing that greed and deceit could never triumph over courage and conviction. And so, the land was finally at peace, its rightful owners restored, its beauty and bounty preserved for all to enjoy. Agnes, surrounded by her friends and her community, knew that she had accomplished her mission. She had honored her ancestors, reclaimed her family's legacy, and inspired a new generation to stand up for what's right. One evening, as the sun set over the Whispering Hills, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Agnes gathered her friends around the quilt. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We brought our family home." They smiled at each other, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. They were more than just friends, they were family, bound together by a shared dream and a shared victory. The power of unity had saved the day. And they knew they would be connected for the rest of their lives. Years passed, and the story of Agnes and her friends continued to be told around the campfire, at town meetings, and during quilting circles. The Whispering Hills thrived and the community prospered, their spirit of unity and resilience stronger than ever. Agnes, now an elder in the community, continued to quilt, her hands still nimble and her eyes still sparkling with mischief. The quilt, though faded with time, remained a treasured possession, a reminder of their incredible adventure and a symbol of hope for future generations. One sunny afternoon, Agnes sat at her work table, surrounded by scraps of fabric and spools of thread. She carefully selected a piece of bright, cheerful cloth, a patchwork of blues, greens, and yellows, representing the restored meadows, the clear-running streams, and the golden sunlight that now bathed the Whispering Hills. She began to stitch, her needle moving with practiced grace. She added a tiny embroidered sunflower, representing the start of their journey, and a cluster of silver stars, representing Finn's guidance. She added a strong, sturdy tree, representing Bo's strength and courage, and a soaring bird, representing Lily's spirit and agility. And in the center of the patch, she stitched a small but powerful symbol. A heart representing the love and friendship that had bound them all together. When the patch was finished, she carefully sewed it onto the quilt, placing it in a prominent position where it could be seen by all. "What does it mean, Agnes?" Lily, now a young woman, asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. Agnes smiled. "It means that our story is not over," she said. "It means that even though we faced challenges and dangers, we never gave up hope. It means that with courage, friendship, and a little bit of quilting magic, anything is possible." She paused, her eyes scanning the faces of her friends. "And it means that this land, this family, this community will continue to thrive for generations to come." The quilt, now complete, became a legacy, a testament to the power of love, courage, and unity. It was a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can make a big difference, and that even the most daunting challenges can be overcome with